So game week 12 is done and dusted. It's time we sit down on this Sunday evening and break down all of the action. Let's go, shall we? So back to normal business on this Sunday evening show. 4 selected games for you. If you do find value from the content, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Over 100 likes would be really impressive. And right now, we're doing it with, dare I say it, ease. And that's down to you. You're doing such a good job of supporting the podcast and reaching new audiences. Thank you very, very much. If you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. It's free to do so. Let's begin with the first game. Charlton against Blakcpool at the Valley. So it finishes Charlton 2, Blakcpool 2, the XG 1.09 to 0.85. I was lucky enough to go to this game because Oxford were done and dusted by 2:30, which was really nice. It was Charlton's fighting character that earned them a point with 2 late goals in the last 10 minutes at the Valley. Let's touch on Charlton first. This is a draw that feels like a win, but individual errors and sloppy defending is the reason why Charlton don't win this game. They could have won this game because it was very, very avoidable mistakes that cost them those goals. The last 10 minutes will give Appleton plenty of positives. The front-footed nature of his side did come to life and the substitutions were a big part of it. I'll come on to that in just a moment because those subs were really, really effective. The raw pace of Torres Campbell with the strength of Chuks and Nike were perfect substitutions and completely changed the complexion of this game. The energy and the fearlessness shown with 10 minutes on the clock baffled that Blakcpool back line. Touching on Blakcpool in detail now, it looked like the perfect away performance. Soak up pressure, remain robust and well organised at the back and be clinical in the final third. And for 80 minutes of the game, that was the case. But with late pressure mounting, Blakcpool struggled to weather the final storm. And I come back to those Charlton subs. They really struggled, Blakcpool, to deal with those additions to the pitch. They were extremely selective with deciding to come forward, and as the away side, that is not unusual, but the decision to protect the lead and use poor game management will be a huge regret. Let's touch on the graph in front of you now, brought to you by SofaScore. For the first 30 minutes, Charlton looked in total control, but in a split second, an avoidable cutback in the box leaves them trailing. Blakcpool then looked comfortable and doubled their lead thanks to a mistake from Hector, which is a terrible mistake at trying to play the ball out. It's a very avoidable mistake from the central defender, who actually did look, for the most part, really good. But the last 10 minutes dramatically changed this game. 2 goals in 3 minutes for Charlton, and this game was completely turned on its head. And by far, Charlton's best attacking spell is the reason they come away with a point. But like I said, mistakes is the reason why they can't come away with more than just a point. When looking at the stats, Blakcpool scored with their only shot on target in the first half, and with Charlton having 60% possession, it did feel against the run of play. Having said that, Charlton was struggling to find successful output with the ball in the first half and were punished when Blakpool's clinical edge saw them lead at the break. 14 of 18 shots and every effort on goal came in the second half for Charlton, who began to play with an effective level of attacking licence. When looking at the average positions, I know I keep banging on about the impact of Appleton's subs, but they can also be visualised when looking at the average positions. The first screenshot, pre-subs if you like, shows a lack of focal point for Charlton, with Tedic being asked to play wide and Liebman and May searching deep for the ball. The second screenshot shows a more narrow approach, but the increase in attacking bodies around the box changed the match. May could continue to come deep, but had the direct runs of Torres Campbell on one side and the central option of Chuks and Nike to play into. When summing up and giving my final points on this game, I thought George Dobson was at the heart of everything Charlton did, and that Blackett-Taylor goal was an absolute stunner. A point at the Valley probably isn't a bad result for Blakcpool, but in that nature and considering things look so secure with very little time left on the clock, the ability to see out a game will be certainly questioned. So next up, Bolton 1, Carlisle 3. The XG 0.86 to 2.90. The non-penalty XG was 0.86 to 1.32. Carlisle stunned Bolton on the road with an exceptional away display, but there's question marks over why it all went so wrong for the Wanderers. Let's touch on Bolton first. It was passive, lethargic and well below par, and the better side won this game. Missed opportunities, clumsy mistakes and an element of complacency after taking the lead meant Bolton were heavily punished by a well-drilled Carlisle outfit. There were question marks over the gritty recent performances from Bolton, but they won the game, so we sort of thought, well, ugly wins are absolutely fine. But that level of performance yesterday was not sustainable whatsoever, and they were definitely punished for that. When touching on Carlisle, I'd love to find the running numbers of this game because every Carlisle player worked their socks off. The character shown after conceding first, then missing a penalty away from home, the belief and resilience within that group gave them every chance to get something from this match. And oh boy, did they get something. They were never feared by Bolton's intention to dominate the ball. They stayed brilliantly compact and were far better when moving into the attacking phase. It was a really impressive Carlisle performance, and watching it and looking at the details of this game, I was so impressed by the way that Paul Simpson set up his side away from home at, let's be honest, a real favourite to be up there come the end of the season with such quality stacked in that squad. When looking at the graph does show a very patchy first half display for both sides, but Carlisle, the team, looking much better in the forward areas. Plenty of domination from the home side after the break, but clinical Carlisle made the most of their moments going forward. I'm sure this does sound very familiar, Bolton Wanderers fans. When looking at the stats, in the first half, Carlisle conceded 75% of the possession. Their attacking product was just as, if not better, than Bolton's. 25% of the ball they had, and they were matching and I'd say bettering Bolton's product in the final third. They managed more shots on goal and the same number of big chances created. This emphasises two things for me: Carlisle's brilliant ability to carve out opportunities from nothing in some cases, and Bolton's lack of ideas in the final third. Bolton only managing 3 shots on target with 70% of the ball shows scary relapses of last season, creative and finishing woes. The miss from Dion Charles in the second half does come to mind straight away when thinking about big opportunities that Bolton missed. Those chances must be converted because any side in this division, home or away, can punish you, and when you miss chances like that, it really can come back to bite you on the backside. When looking at key players, like I said earlier, every Carlisle player should be mentioned. They executed Simpson's plan perfectly, but one man stood out from the rest. Any guesses? Jordan Gibson. He was electric. The hat trick will get the headlines, but when delving deeper into his performance, he was even more crucial than you think. Obviously, converting from half of your total shots is extremely impressive, but take a look at this heat map. For the majority of the game, he's dropping heavily into his own half, almost playing as a wing-back. His position limited Dacres Cogley's ability to be as effective on the right-hand side. This selfless work rate ensured Carlisle were always typed out of possession and a right pain in the backside to break down. I was so impressed by Gibson and his display yesterday for Carlisle United. When touching on the final point and summing up this match, for Bolton, plenty of work to do over the next 2 weeks, but improving those attacking patterns of play must be high up on that list. For Carlisle, they don't have a break. They play again next weekend, but it's the perfect result, totally deserved and impressive throughout. Fair play to them. Next up, Oxford 2, Bristol Rovers 1, the XG 1.86 to 1.01, 3 red cards, plenty of intensity, lots of pressure and unhappy managers post-match. It was a proper game between Oxford and Bristol Rovers. Let's touch on Oxford first. I'll be totally honest, it won't be one of our best performances of the season, but we showed we can be just as effective defensively as well. In the first half in particular, Oxford were forced to weather multiple storms, but thanks to a brilliant display from James Beadle, no goals were conceded. The switch to a back 4 in the second half allowed Oxford to gain more control of the ball and play much better in the final third. When looking at Bristol Rovers, they were, again, quite hard done by, I feel, and they will be frustrated to walk away with nothing, as Joe Barton was in his post-match interview. Surprise, surprise. They managed multiple progressive moments in that first half, but failed to carve out enough clear-cut chances. A side with a more clinical edge would have likely scored before the break. They lost control for a large spell in the second half following Giovanni Brown's sending off, but piled on the pressure in the final moments when Oxford ended up with 9 players on the pitch to finish this game off. When looking at the graph in front of you now, Oxford struggled to settle in the first 10 minutes and the Bristol Rovers' intention to start quickly worked well. But, like a side playing with total confidence, Oxford very quickly took the sting out of the game and scored. Oxford score again following domination after the break, the second goal that proved decisive. I'm sure it's pretty clear when Oxford went down to 9 men. Bristol Rovers smelt blood in the last 10 minutes, but effective game management made the difference. We got over the line. Just and breathe, some would say. When looking at the stats, interestingly, Liam Manning was happy to concede possession again, but had full faith in the attackers to convert when intricate moves were created. The attacking numbers are extremely similar. Oxford edged Bristol Rovers on total shots, and the stat is slightly flipped for shots on target. But 0 big chances for Bristol Rovers may sound harsh, but when reflecting deeper, I do feel Barton's side could increase their creative product when enjoying good spells in games. A quick chat on the red card, because the multiple red cards, actually, the 3 red cards, 2 for us and 1 for Bristol Rovers. Can I understand the manager frustrations? Yes, I can. I thought there was a lack of consistency and a slight failure to control the game at times. Giovanni Brown's second yellow is tough to see, but lunging in like that when you're on a booking forces the referee to make a decision. Ossian Smith comes on, 2 yellow cards in very quick succession. It's silly, and he is quite rightly sent off. It's a silly pass, but he does kick the ball away, and it's a pass not in the direction of the goalkeeper. It's definitely time wasting. It's definitely a second yellow. Stanley Mills, his straight red is confusing and very soft. I think the action of a scissor doesn't help it. I guess he does dive in, and it is... Does he jump? Not really. It's the action, I think. It's the scissor action with both feet going for the ball, but also taking out the player's legs as well. I think it is soft. I think it is confusing, and the Bristol Rovers players weren't asking for a red card. They weren't even asking for a foul. The player that was fouled picked up the ball to take the throw in. So he didn't think it was a red card. He was ready to take that throw in very quickly, and that does suggest that Rovers weren't too fussed. Players anyway. Joe Barton was giving the fourth official a right earful, but that's no change there. That's not a surprise. But the players weren't really asking for that decision to be made. Either way, he was sent off, and we had to manage the game out with, again this season, 9 players on the pitch. When giving my final points on this match, Oxford got over the line, and in previous games this season when things have got quite cagey and aggressive, we've struggled with. Port Vale is a good example of that, but yesterday we just about did it. But like I said, Bristol Rovers, they could easily have got something more than nothing from this match. They definitely put in a performance warranting at least a point, but Oxford, just about, we got through this match. The final game in real detail, Portsmouth 2, Port Vale 0. The XG 2.39 to 1.06. The non-penalty XG was 1.61 to 1.06. The feel-good factor remains at Fratton Park as Portsmouth win by taking the lead. Football really has gone mad. Let's touch on Pompey first. Let's call a spade a spade. It won't go down in the history books for Pompey performance-wise, but it keeps the winning train moving. The first half felt quite patchy, a mix between Portsmouth not quite settling and Port Vale looking to give this game a real go. But similar to Oxford, a good run with plenty of confidence can make it easier to find another gear, and the second half was much more dominant from a Portsmouth perspective. When looking at Port Vale, I thought their performance did show real glimpses of quality, but the no striker tactic is baffling for one, but also makes it very difficult to win games of football. In between boxes in the first half, Port Vale looked to match, if not better, Portsmouth in possession, but issues in front of goal cost them again. But they are playing with no striker, so that would make sense. At least Wilson not starting is weird. He may not be the complete answer, but no striker looks stupid when you make little attempt to test the goalkeeper. When looking at the graph in front of you now, the positive Port Vale signs, that's not easy to say very quickly, can be visualised very, very clearly. I'd say they successfully disrupted the rhythm that Portsmouth wanted to have in the first 45 minutes. But in the second half, the dominant nature of Pompey found their gears and scored early after the break. When looking at the stats, the most interesting stat is the number of big chances both sides had. Pompey managed 6 big chances, Port Vale created 3. The biggest problem for Port Vale, they missed every single one of them. Pompey's second half improvement can be shown statistically. The home side failed to have a shot on target before the break, only having 3 total efforts. But in the second half, Massinio's side conceded more of the ball, but finished with 5 more big chances, 10 more shots, and half of their shots converted into goals. It won't be one of Pompey's best performances of the season, but the reaction after the break is another testament to this squad, which is in very, very high spirits right now. When looking at key players, I thought Joe Rafferty was exceptional at right back yesterday, a key reason why Portsmouth looked so fluid post the break. Cobby Bishop will get the credit for those 2 goals, and so he should. It's great to see a striker hitting the back of the net. But Joe Rafferty, I want to touch on. He accumulated 1 assist, 4 big chances, 8 passes into the final third, and every ground and aerial duel won. His brilliant performance can also be visualised when looking at his personal heat map. It shows his forward positioning, looking to pin Port Vale back in the wide areas. For a right back, in a back four to spend the majority of the game in the opposition half shows where Portsmouth want to create their opportunities from the wide areas. A great Pompey display. 2-0. That's the score. I forgot it there. 2-0 is the final score. A great result for them. Port Vale, great in between the boxes, but need to be better when getting into the boxes, if that makes sense. So let's go around the grounds. Oxford 2, Bristol Rovers 1. That was the early kickoff. Cheltenham 1, Derby County 1. Cheltenham Town scored a goal. That's right, Cheltenham are off the mark now for goals after 12 games. It was Derby County that let them score it. 1-1 the score there. Stevenage 1, Wigan 0, Shrewsbury 1, Northampton 0, Pompey 2, Port Vale 0, Peterborough 2, Lincoln City 0, Leyton Orient 2, Reading 1, Fleetwood 1, Wycombe 4. A humiliating defeat for Fleetwood at home. Wycombe doing the job there. Exeter 0, Barnsley 1. Late on that goal was scored. Charlton 2, Blakcpool 2, and of course Bolton 1, Carlisle 3. Tomorrow is Burton against Cambridge United. That is on, I believe, television, so you can watch that one if you fancy. If you did enjoy the content, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, I've been Jack. This has been the Jack Wood Football Podcast. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.